Hello, friends. It's time for Talk Fort Dodge, the show that uncovers the stories behind the houses in the heart of our community. I'm Jeremiahjcondon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin. Today we are here with Lisa Shimkat, the chair, or did I get that right?
You're so close. So, State Director of Small Business Development Centers, but I'm also the chair of the National America's SBDC.
There you go. I just got that backwards.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to get back to you in a second, but before we do that, we're going to just do a quick market update.
Well, every week we talk about the active listings, and we have 84 residential active listings in Fort Dodge, which every week it seems like it climbs 5 or 6.
Well, we had a lender call us this morning at our meeting and goes, 3 years ago we had 5% more on the market. Last year we had 10% more on the market. And this year, as of to date, he said we have over 50% more houses on the market than we did a year ago, which is a huge increase. And I think we've noticed that.
Yes.
Just in the fact, it used to be we need listings, and all of a sudden it's like we need buyers, and we're kind of shifting from that seller's mode to that buyer's mode to try to go after more buyers. So it's been interesting.
It is. And our average price sales is still lingering around that 160 at 159.
Nice.
Percent of list price received is 95.19%. And one thing I wanted to say is, there's different ways to list a property. We have a lot of people that ask about that. It's like, do I need to paint? Do I need to clean? Well, you should always clean.
Mm-hmm. A clean house sells much faster.
Yes. But, sometimes you just don't need to put all the work into it. And when you're ready to walk away, most of the time it's better to just reduce the price and walk away.
Right.
Unless you are a contractor and you can do all the work yourself. But for the most part, if you're going to spend $25,000 on a kitchen, it's going to sell for $25,000 more or 20 more.
It's going to sell for 15
10
more. Yeah. You're just wasting money.
Yes. So, there's different styles, different areas, but talk to us. That's what we're here for.
I can give you a low, an average, and a high of what your house is going to be worth. And, you kind of have to go into that educated.
Yep. And that's how we talk with investors when they go into a house. We do a CMA on it, telling them, well, this is what it could be if it was an average condition. And this is what it would be if it was the Taj Mahal. And I bring that example up. It's like the good contractor goes in, guts the whole house, puts it up. It could be worth $250.
Right.
But that's the top.
And there's places in town where a 1,000 square foot ranch is only going to sell for $110,000 no matter how nice it is.
Correct.
So don't put a ton of money into a house like that. So,
and a house that sold at that same square footage and everything, same style and everything on Knollcrest Drive is not a comparable to the house over on Highland Park.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the one we just looked at today, and we looked at a couple of them today. This is as much as it's ever going to be worth. Yeah.
All right, let's get to our guest.
Lisa,
Wonderful.
We're just going to start. First of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? You've told us 2 things, kind of where you're growing up and what your ties to Fort Dodge are.
Sure. So, I grew up actually just north of here in Humboldt. I was a Wildcat growing up. My dad taught for Iowa Central for years. My mom taught at the junior high. So I had actually both my parents as teachers. And after going to Iowa Central, went to Iowa State and then decided I needed a real job. But along the way, there was a lot of cool experiences, a lot of opportunities that came up. But I call Fort Dodge my home now. I do work out of Ames, so I commute. It is a little bit of a hike. But I have to say, I've lived here in Fort Dodge for 20 years, and I absolutely love it.
It's a great place to live. I just love it here. And and I've talked to this about, we do this podcast because when I hear people, Google Fort Dodge or, they're in YouTube and Fort Dodge or want to hear about it, you get all those negatives. And we wanted something now, and we've got quite a few episodes to say, hey, this is the positive stuff. And this is somebody that's lived here and made a home here. And
we learn stuff from it each time.
Oh, it's amazing. Having the police chief on here, this was so much fun. And, Josh Porter, the superintendent, you just get to hear so much about the inside workings of everything, whether it's the school, whether it's all that stuff. So what is your most fond memory of Fort Dodge?
I think one of my most fond memories is a compilation of several. Growing up, we had the blended family. We had 4 kids. And throughout that time, we wanted to instill in them a lot of the values that we had as well. And one of them was giving back to the community, being a part of that community, volunteering. So the kids still talk about it when we get together, and now they're all grown. They all have their own homes. But one of them, filling the Easter eggs for the big old Easter egg hunt. The community gardens. We were there when they were first put in, putting the dirt in, and then just being able to volunteer the Coats for Kids program and a lot of the other opportunities that presented itself that our kids could take hold of and be a part of. And now we see them doing the same thing in their communities, which is fun.
That's cool. You forget about that stuff. I forgot about the community garden.
That's right.
We should talk about that more. That's a great addition to our community.
My question was just going to be, how has your childhood influenced what you do now? And you kind of just answered it. Like childhood memories and childhood things.
Well,
bring those things out.
Growing up, we lived in Humboldt, but we farmed in Wisconsin. So every summer we would leave Humboldt. I'd leave all my friends. And we would head up there and we would be out in the field. So from 9 years old, I was out in the field. I was disking. I was not allowed to do anything else that would damage a field.
They let me cultivate once. Once.
That was not me.
Sure, Bell Hutz is still talking about it in the grave.
Yes. Now remember, this was the 80s. I was born in 71. This was the 80s. And it was, the pick acres, a lot of the government programs that were out there. And Wisconsin has different fields. We had Friday Canning Company. We grew peas one time. We had buckwheat. And then we had the land that we had to mow. And at the time, it was really fun. You get out there and you're mowing. And this was before AirPods. This was before any kind of music. So you just had to know a song and sing it yourself. I'm that old. That's how old I am. But it was so much fun. And then growing up, I was in FFA, and one of my projects was feeder pigs. And people would just kind of look at me sometimes like, really? Really? So what did that teach you? Well, it taught me how to make money. It taught me that when I'm spreading manure, I need to know where the wind is. And that sometimes you go into something thinking you know the answer and you know how to do it the best way, but you don't. And so being able to ask other people for help, ask them questions to learn more was so important. And I think that kind of started me on that path.
That's so funny. I forget sometimes, but my senior year of high school, I had a bull. His name was Rush because Rush Limbaugh was just coming out. My mom might be a Democrat. And it was funny. But that same experience of, leading it into the pen and doing all the stuff and the judges and making it do what it needs to do. Yeah, it is just, you talk about feeder pigs. And I had a cow in high school. We're both city kids. But we're spending enough time on the farm that you got to do that stuff. That's so cool.
Me and my cousins were all slave labor for my grandparents, so we had to go out to the farm and pick up the entire garden in like 2 weekends. And I remember just being full on green beans and carrots because I always had the green beans and carrots. I'd eat like every fifth one.
Yep.
You're right off the thing.
And they were fine with that.
Yeah. And one of my kids, we pulled a carrot 2 years ago and like started cleaning it. I had to go inside and it's like, it's clean.
It's clean enough.
Yeah,
It's
2
fine.
times wipe it.
This dirt's not going to hurt anybody.
No.
Right.
It's good for you.
No, you'll chew it up, spit that out, and eat.
Did you guys ever have to bale hay when you'd go to bale and you'd get there and be like,
one time.
It's a straw field. So it's not going to be heavy. And you're like, alfalfa's tomorrow. And you're like, gosh, I want to be sick tomorrow, but I still have to go.
I did have to. Actually, I have a story with that. I was, my dad's brother lives over in Council Bluffs, over in the Glenwood area. So we were baling hay over there. And I don't know what they were thinking because it's not like I had a lot of upper body strength, but they needed bodies. And so my uncle took me out there and he was down, throwing it after he figured out I couldn't lift it myself. And he's like, you do the tractor. I said, okay, I can totally do the tractor. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I got this. I did not have it. And the tongue on the trailer was about an 8x8 square. And I didn't realize that there was 2 sets of brakes and I messed up. And so I'm sliding backwards and this is on trellises. I mean, and it was the entire tongue snapped. And I looked and I was in a panic and I look and I'm 12 years old and there's my uncle and all he did, his head just went, oh. And one of the other guys looks at me, you might just want to walk back to the farmhouse. That's a really good idea. I can totally do that. So yeah, but I learned that once again, you need to ask more questions. You need to figure out how you can do this better.
Yep. I do know how to drive a tractor, but not well. So what do I need to know before And that left and right brake got me a couple of times because you'd hit the right
Yes.
brake and all of a sudden the whole tractor, and you're like, whoa, that's not good. How do I do this?
Yep. And the shifter was up by the steering wheel, so it totally threw me. But yeah, you know, I appreciate all those times, even though I probably complained a lot during some of them.
Yeah.
It still gave me an opportunity to do new things.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
you got to learn so much. And it was
Absolutely.
always, something was always broke.
Right.
It's like owning an RV. Something's always
That's
broke.
right. That's right. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
So, yeah, the farm was so much fun back
Those
in the day.
16-hour days are worth it
they are.
later
They are.
on.
So you talked about going to Iowa State and
Yes.
kind of Humboldt Wildcats, Iowa State. Can you tell us about the journey from Humboldt to Iowa State to becoming where you are today? Because you've done a lot.
I have. You know, you're growing up, what do you want to be? And for what I am now, there's not a career path. There's not a career path that says, okay, you get this degree and you go to this school and then this is your job. It kind of was by accident. So I started out actually at Iowa Central. I was in nursing. And honestly, that lasted like a week. And I realized I am not
Not a
that
nurse.
person. I am not. God bless the nurses out there. I
Exactly.
thought, you know, I think numbers is more my thing. And I was right. Numbers was my thing, and working on computer code and so on. So I got my 2-year degree at Iowa Central. I went on to Iowa State, and my second year at Iowa State, I was actually president of the computer science club at Iowa State.
Nice.
I planned their first.
You were the dork of the dorks.
I was the queen of the dorks.
There. That's
It
a
was
better way to say it.
I love
amazing. It was amazing. And I planned their first social. And we were sitting there and, you know, we could talk about flip-flop circuits. We could talk about a lot of things. But I realized it wasn't where I wanted to be. Yeah. And I needed to be talking with more people. I needed to be out there and more of a sales. And that was when, to the chagrin of my dad, I changed my majors halfway through my senior year. So I graduated, and then I decided, now I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So I actually went into Robert Half, which is the accounting temp agency, and worked for them as I had the life of a gypsy. I've lived everywhere across the United States. I've lived in Aurora, Illinois, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I had the opportunity to try different jobs every time I went there. I would go in, they'd set me up, and I would do accounting at a position. I even worked at Tones down in Ankeny for a while.
Nice.
It was great. And then,
Did you get free seasonings?
no, but they do a lot of product testing. And so I did sign up for every single product testing because I thought, you know what, if somebody's going to pay me for my opinion, I'm going to give it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it.
You don't even have to pay me.
It's a great opportunity. But no, so then, you know, fast forward, I worked for Jacobson Companies. When I decided I wanted to come back to Iowa, I wanted to have kids. I wanted my kids to be around their grandparents. So how could I do that? And I moved to the Altoona area and worked for Jacobson Companies. Dick Jacobson was an amazing entrepreneur, amazing business owner. To the point where when he first started, Firestone was one of his first accounts, and he was actually rolling the tires onto the semi, and he'd jump in the semi and drive it.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely amazing. And I learned so much from him. I remember one time I was at the chemical facility, a warehouse that I worked at, and Excel, the product that we all use and love so much, was pretty new back then. And I remember being at the I was with the ops manager, and somebody said, "Oh, hey, Dick Jacobson's on the phone for you." And I was like, "Yeah,
right.
There's no way the owner of the company's calling me." And so, you know, with all that confidence you have in your early 20s, I was like, "Hello, and Lisa, Dick Jacobson here." So I have found something on Excel because I had helped him on one of his programs. And so then he wanted to repay the favor.
Oh,
I thought,
nice.
oh my goodness, here is the owner of the company calling me. And I learned something then that people are people, and everyone does truly want to help. That's what we needed to focus on. And so worked for them for a few years, came up to the Humboldt area, worked in an agricultural rebuilder. I was the plant manager there. And then I was pregnant with my daughter, and I needed to change positions, had kind of complications. And so I was working for DSOC. I worked for DSOC as the volunteer coordinator. And I remember at the time I went back and was getting my MBA. And as I was getting my MBA, I remember sitting at the fundraiser, and somebody came by and started talking about a business plan. And you guys know me, I couldn't just sit there. There was something they were missing. And I thought, it's not your conversation. And then I was like, you know, actually what you're forgetting is, and I just kind of rattled it off, and they both looked at me, they turned and they said, how do you know that? Like, well, I'm working on my MBA. I've been working with some
Back in 1987, I was at this business and blah, blah,
I
blah.
know, blah, blah, blah. And so they said, are you interested in a different job? And so they actually, about 6 months later, offered me the job for small business development here in the Fort Dodge area.
That's so funny because not that long ago, I had somebody reach out to say this small business owner, she's an aspiring business owner, needs somewhere to work, needs a garage, needs a space. And I'm talking to her, and she goes, so, yeah, I want to get this space. I want it expandable, 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm doing this. I'm like, Microsoft started out of their garage. You don't need a space for this. You're going to go broke trying to get this space. Why don't you just order the stuff bulk, do it out of your garage, start small. You're going to be in at $5,000, $10,000. I mean, at that point, she was ready to borrow $400,000 to start this new business.
Man.
And I'm like, who told you this was a good idea? And let's just start in the garage. I'll help you. And it's kind of that same thing. You're completely missing the point of what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Start small, work your way into it. You go into it, guns a-blazing. Every time I've done that, I've failed miserably. I've lost millions and millions of dollars. So trust me, I know how to lose money. Well, and that also helps you teach people how to make money is, start
Agreed.
where you can start and what can you do. So no, I'm glad you told. Yeah, not every good idea is a profitable idea.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not the only one.
Oh,
it's like I just can't listen to this, and I'll tell Joyce, I'm like, I gotta say something, and then she'll be like, I'm so glad you said something that was driving me crazy too.
I know, and with my background, it's operations. I worked at a chemical facility, warehousing, logistics. There was a lot of moving parts, and growing up, my kids would stop coming to the grocery store with me. They're like, we can't. We go to the grocery store, everybody's talking to you, or we go somewhere and you see something wrong with the process and you can't just walk away.
Yep.
Like, but if I could help somebody, I think it'd be great, right? And they're like, no,
awesome.
No. But as the kids were growing up too, they're all children are so different, and you guys both know. And one of ours was very entrepreneurial, and he actually would have those lemonade stands, and not only lemonade stands, then he would con me into cooking. And I'm not a very good cook, but the scotcheroos, the true Iowa stuff. Then I was spending $60 to $100 on the supplies, and he was keeping all the money. And at one point, he was inside. It was on a Saturday, and I look outside, and his 3 siblings are working the booth. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I told him I'm gonna give him, a little bit of the money, but I'll keep the rest. They're working for me." And I thought, wow, wow. So,
by the way, you owe me $80.
Right. But
there's a delivery fee on this.
But now, he has a business down in Ankeny, and it's going well. But that entrepreneurial spirit, and it's just something that, all of our children have it, and they're using it in different ways. And I just absolutely love working with businesses. That's what I've done, and then I've done the state director position now for 10 years, and absolutely love it.
The conversation I've been having lately is your business is like your kid. So
Absolutely.
If you have 3 kids, the business is your 4th.
Yes.
And people
Absolutely.
that don't understand that have trouble. And you do the same thing. It's, Joyce has gotten used to me working 7 days a week. Odd hours. The phone rings at 7 at night. I'm like, I'm getting it. I just got to take this. And, I hear other people like, no, you have to set limits. You have to do that. And I'm like, I understand setting limits because if I go on vacation or he goes somewhere, we take care of each other to do that stuff done. So those limits can be stretched a little bit. But yeah, owning a business is like having another child. And if you don't treat it like it's your child, it's just not going to make it.
It needs the attention. And, it kind of leads into another part of the conversation is work-life balance.
Yes.
And that has always been, it was a huge challenge for me, I think, when my kids were littler. And I remember going to the elementary school. All of our children went to Duncombe Elementary. And I remember one of the kindergarten teachers there, Karen Den Hartog, was amazing. And I don't know if I've ever had a chance to tell her this, but when I would go, I was teaching at Buena Vista. I was working full time. 4 kids, they're in activities. I was going 20 different directions, and I brought the napkins. Like, everybody signs up for all these cool things. Somebody's making some dessert that has 27 ingredients pre-Pinterest, and it's
Pre-Pinterest,
it's
that was
so
a big deal.
impressive. And here I come in with napkins, and you kind of feel a little bit like a failure at first. And it was like, no, you got to give yourself that chance that it's okay. And I remember the next time I came in, and Karen was there, and she goes, don't worry, because it was, the parent sign up. And she goes, don't worry, I signed you up for napkins for every event. Like, oh my gosh, thank you.
We need
You
napkins.
understand.
Yes, thank you so much. And she said, Lisa, napkins are important. Everybody has a part of this. And that's what I take away. That's what I remember.
I went to volunteer for the Kids' Day movie day.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
me and one other adult. And I get there, and she brought from the movie theater a big bag of popcorn. And I walk in with nothing. And I'm like, oh, were we supposed to,
Sorry.
Right?
Oops, didn't read any memos.
I don't
So
pick
I
up well
served all the kids. I was like, oh, let me serve them. I'll take care
Right.
of it.
Yep, you got to do your part. You got to
right.
do what you can.
And it's okay being the napkin mom. It's okay, because at the end of the day, I had a conversation with one of the, actually two of the kids, not that long ago. They're both married now. Three of them are married, and in talking with two of them, they looked at me and I said, gosh, I still feel guilty sometimes. When I first took over this position, so far this year, I've spent 42 nights in hotel. Far this year. So I'm on the road a lot. And so I brought up to them, hey, remember when I had that conversation? And they said, oh, yeah. And sometimes I think about it, should I have done it differently? And it was great because my son looked at me and said, oh, absolutely not. I remember that conversation. And his wife was right there. She goes, I remember it too. And he goes, you said, hey, this is going to take me away from home, lots of stuff going on. Here's what I took away. I get more free time. Ed's going to do all the cooking, and I'm going to have more time to play games. And I thought, wow, 20 years later, okay, great.
I remember that conversation. I don't
And now
think
he's
of it
got
that
better
way.
hand-eye coordination.
I know, right? Look at
Exactly.
it. He probably can make money as a gamer now. But you have to find what works for you. There's no such thing as work-life balance. You have to figure out what works for you, what makes you happy, and how you can still bring the family together.
And I have noticed you're in a different generation, but having the kids out of the house as an empty nester is a little bit dangerous, and a little bit work-life balance really doesn't matter. And, we're flexible enough in our careers that I can, if I want to take off a Tuesday afternoon and Joyce and I go do something, we'll just go do it. Mm-hmm. But that's our work-life balance, isn't that, Saturdays, Sundays is family time, and after 5 o'clock or whatever.
Todd's like my go-to guy for a 6 o'clock showing when I didn't know there was a
PM.
soccer game.
6
Right.
p.m.
Right.
6 a.m. Sam, 6
Oh,
p.m.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I was at the office last 2 days at 5:30, and this morning I text the whole group at 7 o'clock, and somebody came in today and was like, yeah, don't ever text us again at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was like, it's not that early, guys.
I'm going to wait till 7 p.m. before I respond.
Can't people set their so you don't get notifications between
Yes.
certain hours?
Yes, you.
I
mine
am
won't turn
not.
until 8.
a.m.
I am not super tech savvy, but
I'll teach you how if you really want to know. So what does, we're going to move on to a different thing. We've been talking about us and you, and what does the state director for the SBDC do?
it gives me the opportunity to get out across the state and talk with different businesses. What do you need? Are we designing the right programs for you? Lately, it's been a lot of disaster assistance. Down in Greenfield, we had a team down there. We had a team down in Minden. And I was actually in Omaha when the Greenfield tornadoes went through. It is one of those things where one day I might be doing a ribbon cutting, which is so exciting. And then the next you're talking with a business owner that's lost everything. We are a resource there that is completely at no cost. We have 15 centers across the state, and they can reach out to us once. They can reach out to us for 100 years. It doesn't make any difference. But what we want to make sure that we do is help them with finding out what their options are. That's what's important to us.
Okay.
So we were somewhere the other day, and you were talking about how the SBDC or the SBA funds FEMA. How does this is just one of those interesting things I just wanted to hear more about.
So when there's a natural disaster, SBA becomes the lending arm of the federal government. So if there's a disaster, FEMA comes in. Now, I must say, FEMA is the big dog. And so once they have the federal declaration, they can bring other agencies in. They can bring in the IRS, SBA, And then they do the Disaster Recovery Center, the DRC, and SBA will come in and do a BRC, a Business Recovery Center. So what sometimes can get confusing, though, is if you need a home loan, you get your FEMA number, but then you still go to SBA for the loan because they do all of the loans for a disaster.
Nice. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, I just thought that was interesting because I'm why is the SBDC going to do all these different things? And because you said you were there for the Greenfield.
Yep.
So in your opinion right now, how are businesses doing as a whole?
The answer to that is it depends.
I know that's a super loaded question.
I know.
Well, it's got to kind of be by industry. So there's certain industries. I see John Deere's laying off people. So I think the farmers with interest rates are being a little tough, the lines of credit and keeping that going. But there's other things that have to be, what's kicking butt right now?
Things that are kicking butt right now is some of the innovation out there. There's opportunities for innovation, but it depends on the type of innovation. Some innovations, if you're looking in the medical field, you're looking at a runway that's really long. There's other innovations, though, and that's when we see, the John Deere's and some of the others out there, when they start laying off, they put more money towards the R&D to look for that next opportunity. And it kind of helps solidify, and they've been around for years and years. And it's not just John Deere, there's other companies that do the same type of thing. To your question, what other companies that are doing a good job? The ones that are doing a great job are the ones that have been able to say, you know what? I had a bad idea. I'm going to turn and I'm going to look at it this way. The ones that are trying to figure out, here's where I was and here's what I thought I needed to do, but letting go of your idea for the sake of your business to accept the way that you need to take your next step is so important. And that's what we see a lot of the businesses that are willing to do that. The ones that are struggling are the ones, but I've always done business this way and this has worked.
Traditional.
Correct. You have to look at things differently. Your customer is different. Years ago when I first came to Fort Dodge, I remember somebody came up to me and he was on the board of one of the banks. And he goes, I need to figure out how to get your generation in the bank. And I said, no, you need to figure out how to get the bank in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if you can figure that out, I can do so many more things, because what you just sold me is not your lending tools. You've sold me the opportunity to have more time.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to do any of this stuff. And,
Right.
I can just take care. And they've done it.
Absolutely.
And they're
haven't-
still kicking and screaming a little bit about
We
it.
have an
know.
employee that's 22 years old, and all of her checks are sitting on her desk, and we're like, "Oh, so you're just kind of like working for free," because that's how I look at it.
Right.
And it's just like, no, well, takes a picture or whatever. It's all done like that, and it's like, oh, I thought you're just piling up checks.
See, this will put Jim Kesterson's going to have trouble, because the first big commission check you ever get at Kesterson, the first thing he says is, you should take that check and frame it and put it on the wall so that you can't cash it.
Oh.
So he's like, you should frame
So
that check.
she does.
So, yeah, she keeps all the checks. So, yeah, it's the first thing he said to you. It's the first thing he said to me is, you should frame that check. No, don't frame it just like it is and put it on the wall. Don't take it to the bank.
But,
Oh, my goodness.
But every industry is changing with technology and everything, and you have to change with it, or you have to adapt in some way. Almost
Absolutely.
every business.
Well, and I'm on a couple boards on the statewide level, and we have different programs that we're reviewing applications for. And when we have somebody say they need an extension because of supply chain challenges, well, that was okay in 2020, 21, 22, but now we're in 2024. The supply chain is what it is. And yes, there's still challenges, but how can we address that? And how can we move your business so that it doesn't impact that bottom line as much as it did before?
Yep.
Uber.
Just-in-time manufacturing that's what
Absolutely.
everybody used. Now you're going to have a warehouse again, because you're going to get
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you look back, and Uber completely changed the taxi industry, the ride shares, all of that. But it changed the industry. And at first people are like, why would I get in a stranger's car?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't think twice. I bet you both of you have the Uber app, maybe Lyft, and if you think, oh gosh, I need to get a taxi. Whoa, wait a minute.
How do I do that?
Right.
There's only very few. So when Joyce and I are leaving certain airports, we'll take a taxi, because they hid the Uber back so far it's hard to get to. But when we come back, we take the Uber, and we'll take it all over town. So like Vegas, it's so much easier to walk out and get a taxi.
Oh yeah.
And just take it to the airport when you get to that is the only time we'll use a taxi the entire time we're there, is from the airport to the hotel. Because it's so easy, and I can,
It's
almost
ease.
car. Yeah.
It's giving you time.
Right.
And that's kind of a secret that if a business can figure that out, it's huge. We've seen a lot of businesses too that market differently or realize that I need to market to a different group. I need to create a different customer group out there. So how do they do that? How do they figure out, are you my customer? Are you my customer? And an example I always use is we all have shoes on. Every single person in this room has shoes on. If I sell shoes, you're not all my customer though.
Right.
So how do I target that? Because when somebody says, oh, the world is my customer, that's not going to be successful. You have a couple businesses here in town that went and did a lot of Facebook Live videos during COVID.
Yep.
That was delightful because you know what? I could look at that. I could text and say, hey, I want that. And I'd go, they'd run my card and they'd bring it out to the car. Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
Yep.
So.
And that doesn't work quite as well anymore, but it still works and people are still doing it, but not to the
Well,
level
my wife
they did.
still calls Target and orders stuff, or probably
Right.
she probably doesn't call. She probably orders it through the buttons, and then she'll go pick up the kitty litter and come home.
We own one franchise and they were fighting DoorDash for the longest time. And then in the last 30 days, they're like, okay, we finally came to a deal with DoorDash. And Jordan goes, it's unreal. He goes, this is the best thing. It works so much better.
Oh, yeah.
And, people, it's all you can really use. There's no Uber Eats in town. So you use DoorDash and everybody uses it and it works like a charm every time. And it's just been
Absolutely.
awesome.
So
But no, you had to adjust.
different.
And it even takes some of these franchises years to get into the mode of doing it.
Right.
So what would you see as some common challenges for small businesses?
Some common challenges. I think sometimes as a community, we're our own worst enemy. Small communities, and I'm saying Fort Dodge is still a small community. We need to support those local businesses. If your first reaction is to go out of town to go shopping, and I get it, not everything you can get here in Fort Dodge or here in Humboldt or Cresco or insert the name of any small business. But we need to make sure we support them because if that small business fails, or let's say they don't have a succession plan, and all of a sudden their succession plan is death, and that business is gone. So that impacts that family. It impacts those employees, and it impacts the philanthropic giving of that community. Because who do we go to first? We go to those small businesses. You guys get folks coming to you all the time. Can you donate to this? Can you help out with this cause?
Oh, yeah.
And it's so
unbelievable.
important. Yeah.
People I've never met, never seen, never been in our business. And then the people that are there all the time. And it's,
Right.
it affects the people that come in all the time. It's so easy to say yes. The
So-
people that you don't even know the name, you've never seen this person, and you're like, you know what, you're the person going to Des Moines to shop. So why don't you
Right.
ask that Des Moines business?
And I think probably a call to action of anyone watching this is pick 2 businesses in the community you've never been to and go to them. Shop with them. Let's say you are so used to you don't want to leave your house. ShopIowa.com actually has a lot of local businesses as well. And if there's a local business here that isn't on it, they can get on it for free. But it was something that was started
nice.
actually during COVID so that we could
what is
get
that?
ShopIowa.com.
Cool.
We're going to go to that and buy something today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because one little purchase can make a difference. And that's what I guess I'm trying to get across is as a community, the best thing you can do is step up and go into that business.
I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, my wife and I decided we're not going to buy one single thing online for Christmas. And we go crazy over Christmas. That's we're both like Christmas babies. We just love Christmas, so our kids are really spoiled. But that's one thing we could do.
Absolutely.
And just try to hit up all the little shops and stores. And
Joyce and I went, we don't buy a ton for Christmas because the kids, and money fits better. The grandkids we buy lots of stuff for, but we did one year where we had to buy everything from local stores. So we ended up in every little downtown, store, and that's when the mall was still open. So you went into all those, and what can we buy that was made here, that stays here, that,
Absolutely.
I even know a Shiny Top, that first couple of beers we sold is the proudest moment of your life. It's like, I actually made something I can sell.
Yes.
And, do it over and over. And how do I have to do this? And Nate had it down to the number of beers we had to sell per week.
or even give a gift certificate.
Absolutely.
There's one of the boutiques that I went into one day, and it's oh, they have a lot of really cute girls' clothes. Nothing for me, but I got a $50 gift card for Jenny, and now she's in there all the time.
Yep.
See, it's a win-win.
It makes a big difference. What advice would you give to somebody starting a business in Fort Dodge?
The first
Or
advice
in
I
Iowa.
would give them is to really sit back and understand your customer. You need to understand who that customer is. Just because they buy a product similar to yours doesn't mean they're going to come to buy you. And then how can you meet them halfway? Plan. Utilize the small business development centers. It's just iowasbdc.org. And it's a completely free service. And there's free guides on there too. Let's say you want to start a daycare. Well, what are some of the things you can do to help minimize the risk? Because that's what we can do, is help minimize that risk. You talked about how somebody wanted to start with $400,000.
Right.
We get a lot of folks coming in. Okay, I'm going to need $150,000. Okay, for what? Yep. You know, let's say it's a restaurant. Well, guess what? The restaurant, you don't need that much. And we can go to the auction house and we can get used. We can try to figure out how we can put it all together. So there's lots of options out there to minimize some of the money going in, and sweat equity doesn't count.
No.
So if you need to have cash is king, and have cash down. There's lots of loan programs out there that can be helpful, but do your homework.
So I tell you what, Shiny Top, well, all of them are so much easier to run than when there's money in the bank.
Right.
When you are deciding who to pay at the end of every week, and we have been there with all of them, and it cycles. I mean, during COVID, it was like, who's going to get a check this week, who's not?
Right.
And when you have that little bit of nest egg there to say, okay, we know this is good, you know, just buy it. You know what, something broke, you know. The kegerator's not working just right. Well, let's just get it fixed. Let's not, wait. We're going to have to pay, somebody right away. Let's get it done. Make sure we get it done. Because having that little bit of money, it will make or break a restaurant. And you'll spend the same amount at the end of the year.
Right.
But having, even $10,000, $15,000 there just to have the emergency fund.
But even if you have that nest egg and you're spending it wrong, it can go really fast.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Right.
Well, you gotta watch the books.
Do you explain to these people when they start a new business that they're going to be working for free for 2 or 3 years?
We tell them that starting a business is a part-time job. You can do whatever you want with the other 12 hours of the day. If you want to sleep, you can do that. There's other options, but it's a huge commitment. And sometimes even just breaking it down for someone, okay, here's what time you need to get there to open up. Here's what time it's going to take, to close everything down, to clean it up. This is what you have to be ready for. And you still have a commitment to your family. So are you ready for all of that?
Yep. This is your...
I may have said this before, but when I jumped into real estate, I came from the restaurant business. Mm-hmm. And when I joined, they said, well, here's the deal. If you work really hard, 40 hours a week, you can make a living. If you work 60 hours a week, you can make a killing. I'm like, 60 hours? That's vacation.
That's
coming from the restaurant business, my wife is going to be so happy to hear that.
I'm going to be home by 7 o'clock every night? Wow.
Right?
Oh, it is a whole different world. Yeah. Awesome.
But that's what I would tell them. Just start planning. And the best thing, too, if you are in a relationship or have family, talk with your family, too. Because they need to be on board. It's not just you starting that business. You are working with your family. Whether they're there at the business or not, they're part of it.
Right.
So how do you stay motivated to continue to do your job? Because you seem so happy and vibrant talking to us about it.
It's exciting. I learned something about Iowa every time I'm out on the road. I was just in Cresco, Iowa, not that long ago. And as I was over there, that's where Norman Borlaug actually is from. And the first flight attendant was actually from there, and the Wrestling Hall of Fame. So what I like is when I'm doing these business meetings in these small communities all across the state, I get to visit the small businesses. I get to see what they're doing. I get to hear their stories, and they're so unique and they're so cool. And then I get a chance like today to talk about those and encourage people to go to those small businesses. Mount Vernon has an amazing store for men's suits. And we have one of our kids lives over by Cedar Rapids, and he's gotten all of his suits there now. And it's just a small business that was owned by one person for 50 years, and they just sold to a young couple. Wow, and that's what we need to do, is tell those stories, or the story behind the story, to get people energized to go to that small business.
I do worry about that, because there is one men's clothing store in town, and it's getting to the point. It's second or third generation already.
And that's what we go there.
I do too. Not as often as I should. And John's a great guy. I love going in there. It's just I'm never in the area. I don't wear dress clothes like that.
Because you have to make the time. You have to make the time to go to these businesses.
Yeah, you're wearing jeans.
I know. He sells jeans.
So I'm not understanding where his excuse is anymore.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I'm making excuses for him.
I'm going to go
It's
see
not
John
working.
tomorrow.
But other things, if I can answer another part of that question, is aside from the small businesses, it's also given me the opportunity to talk about businesses on the national scale. And maybe some people wouldn't be excited to be on C-SPAN, but I was able to testify before Congress a couple of times or before Senate hearings. And it was amazing because then I gave a voice to businesses that didn't have a voice, that were victims of the flood back in 2017 and 2018. And so we could tell their stories and we could tell them, here's how it impacts in a rural area, because we don't have the connectivity that you have in Chicago, in New York, in San Diego.
Yeah.
But what we have is rural ethics. We have that support that people show small businesses that we need to continue showing, and we need to get the next generation, hey, you need to shop local.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
what motivates me.
That's awesome.
Well,
Go small business.
That's right.
Yeah. ShopIowa.com.
ShopIowa.com.
If
Put
in
that in
doubt.
the description somewhere. Lisa
Yeah.
Watch
Shimkat
Lisa
and
and
ShopIowa.com.
Yeah, right? I know. It's
How long ago was that?
I just did it again this year too. I want to say back in March. So I've done it twice, and it is a lot of fun. I was able to also represent the interests of small businesses on an SEC meeting, advisory board for the Securities and Exchange Commission. And, you have those moments of, why am I here?
Yeah.
I was sitting next to, there was 10 of us, I think it was. And you have the SEC commissioners that I met, Michael Pivovar at the time was the commissioner that had appointed me. And I asked him, and he said, oh, just a second. And he took a phone call and came back. Oh, it was the president's office and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, no worries.
Yeah.
He outranks me. But at the time, sitting around that table, and I remember turning to the person next to me. I said, well, what do you do? She goes, oh, I'm vice president at NASDAQ. And I'm like, huh.
Wow.
And she goes, what do you do? And I said, well, I work with small business development centers. This is what we do. And she was like, that's amazing. So your story is amazing. And I was able to put a voice then for the rights of small businesses when it comes to accredited investors and, ask the why. Why do you want to increase this or decrease that? Well, because this is what the percentage was back in, 1960.
Yeah.
And what I just heard from everything that you just said is Fort Dodge found a way to make it to that room.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our little community is up there with the
absolutely.
big boys.
We are. And they're listening. They're listening. We actually had one of the other commissioners used one of our examples.
Wow.
Because I can get a little argumentative when folks are not understanding a rural aspect. And so during one of the meetings, I made a comment about that it was the accredited investor comments and conversation. And he said, well, we need to increase it. We need to increase the income or the wages. And I said, why? Well, because at the time, only, I don't know what the percentage was, let's say 8% qualified, now 16% qualified. And I said, well, that's great. That's more people available to put money into a small business. And he's like, no, we need to put it at this. I said, but what about in the rural areas? Because in Iowa, and this was, I want to say back in 2018, you could buy a 4,000 square foot home for $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and said, well, I'd like to see where that home is. And I said, well, it's my home. Come on over.
Yeah.
And one of the other commissioners used that in her comments back because the cost of living is so different. So you can't make a decision in Washington based on the numbers you have in front of you. You have to look at nationwide and represent the folks that you're truly representing. It's so important.
That's so cool.
That's a good way to end it right there.
That is a good way. Well, we do appreciate having you here today.
Absolutely.
This has been a ton of fun. And I learned a lot about you and
Awesome.
I hang around with quite a bit. we do go camping every once in a while in the fall.
That's right.
So if we have any business questions, we know
Absolutely.
where we need to go.
Yeah.
Know
Just
where to call.
call me, text me, email me. And if I don't
Go
know the
knock on your
answer,
door.
I will make sure to get you the right person that does.
Awesome.
Awesome. Once again, thanks for coming, Lisa. We
Thank
appreciate
you guys
a lot.
very much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
That's a wrap at today's episode of Talk Fort Dodge.
Stay connected with us on social media and join us next time as we continue exploring Fort Dodge's stories through the lens of two lifelong Dodgers. I'm Jeremiah Condon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin, and this is Talk Fort Dodge.